Okay, comrades, I'd like to welcome everybody to today's meeting of the Workers' International Network. We're studying today, we always examine the workers' struggles around the world and the issues that face the working class. And of course, we have to recognize that absolutely the top weapon that the ruling class uses to try to break the unity of the working class is to use the old slogan, divide and rule. And we see in every country, practically, they use the same device in order to drive a wedge between the working class. Because when the workers are united, then there's really no force on earth that can stand in their way. And therefore, the capitalists depend on divisions within the ruling class, within the working class. We've got, I think, probably all the comrades here are keenly aware of that from the experiences in their own country. We've got comrades here from South Africa, where we see the horrific display of xenophobia recently against Zimbabweans and other migrants into South Africa, and it's used as a device in order to get the workers fighting each other instead of standing together against the bosses. In Britain, of course, we have this constant whipping up of racist propaganda and propaganda against migrants and foreigners as a whole. We've got comrades here from Cyprus, where, of course, the island was partitioned and divided after a civil war and interference by foreign powers between the Greek and Turkish populations, which had lived in relative harmony up until that time. We've got comrades here from Ireland, and we, of course, that again has been the classic example of where working class has been divided along sectarian lines between the Protestant and Catholic communities. I know that there are comrades on their way here from India, where we see that Modi is fighting an election campaign now on the basis of the most virulent and shocking anti-Muslim propaganda in order to rally the Hindu community behind his policy of increased and intensified exploitation of the working class. And I think we can all give many more examples. So it's really important that workers need to be warned and to prepare and to arm themselves politically and in every way in order to forearm themselves against this attempt of the ruling class to drive a wedge into their ranks. So we're really lucky to have today Comrade Antonello, he's an Italian comrade living now in Romania, but he spent many years in Bosnia, and Bosnia was perhaps the classic example where the ruling class succeeded in driving a stake to split the working class, because long after, or some time after, the bloodbath that emerged in Serbia and Croatia and in Slovenia with the breakup of Yugoslavia, there were united demonstrations by workers in Sarajevo in Bosnia of the three communities: the Serbs, the Croats, and the Muslims, and they were pledged that whatever happened, they would not allow themselves to be divided along communal or ethnic lines in the way that had been done in the rest of the former Yugoslavia. And yet we saw how tragically and unfortunately how easily it was possible for the militias of the different sides to wreak havoc and to split the working class and to create probably the bloodiest of all the civil wars that took place within that region. Now, Antonello has made a real study of this and he has a real knowledge of this, and we're really lucky to have him here. So I'm going to invite Antonello to speak now. He'll speak for about 20-25 minutes. We'll have plenty of time for discussions, questions, contributions, and for Antonello to answer questions. And of course, he'll sum up at the end. So welcome, Comrade Antonello. It's over to you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you all. Yeah, I have, there are a lot of things that I could say about the situation in Bosnia, where I lived for 3-4 years. And when I was young and naive, and now, of course, I'm not young anymore. But I think that I'm naive in any case, because the situation in Bosnia is one of the most complex situations I ever met. And politically speaking, today I'm going to present some details of a very, very, very complex structured situation. And what we will do is to see what we can learn from a situation that unfortunately, went to work in back then during the 90s. I spent between 2005 and 2006 and 2008. I used to live there. I was a volunteer for the European Commission the first year and a teacher of Italian language. And I spent a lot of time with different organizations, and we will see different organizations that actually collaborated regardless of the inner borders of the countries is a concept we are going to see again. I think that one of the things that are more important now is to just let you see one simple image, and please confirm to me if you can see this map.
Yes, very good.
Okay, so this is basically, let's say so, the end of what actually happened and how Bosnia looks like now, politically speaking and administratively speaking. Bosnia is a country that has a concept existing only for this country in the world, the concept of entity. Basically, at the end of the war in '95, after the Dayton Agreement, the partition of the country was decided in Ohio, and where these two entities were created, one representing the Bosnian Serbs, so the so-called Serbian Republic of Bosnia or Republika Srpska, and the other one, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, comprising the Muslim and Croatian territories. So the red part and the north and the east of the country is the so-called Republika Srpska, and the other one, the blue, is the Federation. The Federation, the Muslim Croat Federation, is divided in 10 different cantons. You can see here the different colors and shades of blue. And basically this makes Bosnia one of the most complicated countries in the world when it's a matter of the administrative layers, from simple citizen to the top level of a government. Basically, we have a situation in which the war borders created the shape of the country as you can see it now. And even if the Dayton agreements were supposed to last 3 years at most, the situation is that Bosnia is still like this now, and the situation didn't improve. I have been in Bosnia, let's say so, 15 years ago. It's a lot of time, but one of the most interesting things, and I can actually now stop my sharing, is that the situation didn't change drastically from that period. One of the lessons we can learn from the situation in Bosnia is that communalism and as Roger put it, the intervention of the ruling class, and I would stress the ruling classes, not only in Bosnia, but in Yugoslavia and in Europe and the international community at that time, made everything possible at the beginning of the war to destroy what Yugoslavia was. Yugoslavia was a project, first of all. Was a project, as you know, it was not aligned, was a project based on the partisan war which took place in the territory of former Yugoslavia, and in Bosnia especially, and was a project that actually tried to solve the problem with different kinds of nationalisms in the Yugoslavian territory, replacing them with a single socialist one. One of the slogans, one of the most important slogans in Tito's era was in the language, Serbian, Croatian, was Bratstvo i jedinstvo, meaning brotherhood and unity. So it was something relying on the idea to solve forever the problems between different communities there. And even if a lot of different scholars would say otherwise, this experiment actually worked. For 2 generations, this experiment created a sense of unity and a sense based on the working class of Yugoslavia, which actually culturally shaped that area. And was only after Tito's death and during the 80s that, based on internal and external pressure, domestic and international pressure on Yugoslavia, the situation started to worsen drastically. The problem now is it's a very long story. Actually, Bismarck said that the Balkans produce more history than they can consume. So there will be too many details to be provided now. But basically, in the 80s, the fascist nationalism or so-called Ustaša nationalism in Croatia, the Chetnik or Serbian nationalism in the Serbian area, and of course, and the Croatian nationalism in Bosnia too, in the western and southern part of Bosnia. The Bosniak, meaning Muslim nationalism, started to increase their influence and to replace the brotherhood and the unity slogan with communal slogans. The situation was that in the international community, different countries and different organizations started to, after the fall of the Berlin Wall especially, started to create a situation in which the secession of some of the republics, the 6 republics, of course, it started with Slovenia, and the war started there, but lasted only 10 days, because in the meantime, the war started started in Croatia between the regional forces of Croatia and the so-called JNA, so the People's Army, Yugoslavian People's Army. And very soon, the war started in the 91, started between 2 factions, the Croats and the Serbs, in Croatia. Bosnia tried, and as Roger explained, there were huge manifestations in Bosnia in order to prevent that the war could expand there in their territory, one of the most multicultural territory in Europe, and not only in Europe. But the pressure from the internal nationalisms, I want to stress the plural here, and the backing of some countries, for example, usually Catholic countries for the Croatian part, Orthodox countries for the Serbian part, Muslim countries for the Bosniak, meaning Muslims part, made everything possible to try to haste a referendum for the declaration of independence without the Serbian part to participate in it, and that basically created the very basis for the war starting in April of '92. The war started, namely in Sarajevo, during a wedding, and started in the days following the first shootout in the city. Clearly during the manifestations peace manifestation, pacifist manifestations, and multi-ethnical, as we would say, manifestations. Snipers, as we know, was a common iconographic trait, but then started to shoot down people and work in socialist manifestations. I want to stress that the struggle to keep Yugoslavia and Bosnia together was a leftist one, and was crushed. Soon, Serbian troops coming from Serbia and from the Serbian territory in Bosnia started to attack other territories where the Muslim population was majority, and then started a kind of war of everyone against everyone. I'm sorry to synthesize in this way, but the war started in all different borders. At the beginning, the Croatian and Muslim population fought together against Serbs, but in '93, in southern and central Bosnia, the Croats and the Muslims started to enter wars against each other. And the situation basically became one, sorry for the formal expression, a total mess. In this period, there are a lot of different, there were a lot of different attempts to stop the war. The international community was at its worst. One peripheral country like Bosnia was at the center of a kind of international struggle. And I think that no less than 20 different attempts of agreements were actually made, and the outcome was a disastrous one. Basically, the United Nations tried to handle the situation, and the outcome was disastrous as well. Basically, the territory was parted. Ethnic cleansing was a commonplace back on a country which had approximately 4 million people. 2.5 million people were displaced from their regions where they lived. And of course, I have to mention the mass rape, the bombing of Sarajevo, the destruction of some of the towns and villages on the borders with Croatia and Serbia, and the fact that in the end, the situation went out of control totally. The reasons are multiple. I don't want to bore you with all the details. Maybe we can speak about it later during our conversation. But in the end, when the United Nations started to create a new concept, the so-called UN safe areas, mostly in the east of the country, comprising Gorazde, Srebrenica, Jepa, and Foča, and so on. And these areas should have been protected by the United Nations, and they couldn't actually handle it. In the end, at the end of the war in Bosnia, basically, Franjo Tudjman, who was the fascist leader of Croatia at that time, and Milosevic was the president of Serbia at the time, basically agreed to part Bosnia, and they had to free some regions from the presence of consistent minorities. And one of the consequences, of course, and this was done with the international community agreement. I know that it sounds kind of harsh or even exaggerated, but I think you already know about Srebrenica, the hugest massacre in Europe after World War II until then. Basically, in order to make the Dayton Agreement possible, 8,000 Bosniak Muslims were killed in a span of 3-4 days. And this was actually decided with the implicit agreement of international community. The NATO, for the first time in its history, completed airstrikes in Bosnia in order to free Sarajevo from the presence of the Bosnian Serbian militias. And of course, it was something that was prepared for extending the influence of NATO in that area, not only in that area. In the end, so the situation was that the country was divided in that absurd way that you actually saw. And it's not only about geography, about the political, the administrative structure of the country. Is one of the few countries in the world which has 3 presidents and not one. 3 presidents representing the 3 communities or the 3 minorities, because as saying those, Bosnia is a country in which everyone is part of a minority. And so we have 3 presidents for the Serbian, for the Croats, and the Bosniaks, I mean the Muslims, which is absurd because, of course, not all the population of Bosnia is part of these three communities. We have, for example, Rome, we have the Jewish communities, and we have other communities. And by the way, the parliament is, the two houses of the parliament are decided based on this territory borders that we saw, the entities. Basically, this hampering the possibility to have a representation in Bosnia for example, a working class party. Because now the lines dividing the political landscape there are only ethnical ones. And there is very few room for let's say so, inter-entity organizations to organize and to be represented, even if there are some, we're going to speak about it. There are some organizations trying to collaborate with each other regardless of a division. The problem is that the situation in which basically there are some parties representing communities and not actually general electors, as we would say in a normal situation, is that everything is divided. And as Roger said at the beginning, after the Latin motto, divide et impera, the situation for the working class in Bosnia is a dire one. Is absolutely, it's not impossible, but it's close to impossible to have a mass movement if it's not, and I'm totally believing what I'm saying here, it is if it's not a revolutionary one. Because based on the old structure now, that the country is actually allowing people to have, basically there is very few room again for an international strike. So it's in there has been some manifestations in Tuzla, for example, of the city I lived in for 2 years in the north of the country, the Federation. In 2014, there were huge strikes and huge manifestations against the privatization of state firms that were, of course, dictated by the international agreements that Bosnia was in. So basically, the strategy was to privatize everything in Bosnia. And of course, these manifestations ended with the repression you could actually expect from it. Now, the problem is how, and this is one of the lessons I would like to speak about, what is possible to do, first of all, to avoid a situation of this kind? Because one of the conclusions here is a kind of grim. One of the best ways to avoid to be divided among ethnic lines is to prevent it. In case of Bosnia, it was not possible. It was even actually promoted at a certain point. The Dayton agreements are actually a kind of incredible and evident consequence of this mindset. And what is possible to do for Bosnian people in this situation and for the Bosnian working class? What is possible for them to do? Because one of the things I want to, sorry for providing you with some personal details. I spoke with a lot of comrades there. Usually, as I told Roger when he was here in Bucharest, the parents' generation are in a way more progressive than the last generation, the youngsters of Bosnia, that are starting to identify themselves with the ethnic lines that were imposed to them. And it's a risky situation because, of course, in this case, we are seeing communalism taking place everywhere in Bosnia, and the situation getting worse year after year. So one of the things that my comrades, told me that back then is that only an international support in Bosnia. And of course, I'm not speaking about the European Union support or international organization structure and institutions. An international workers network can actually help Bosnia to basically cancel and I'm not exaggerating what they told me, they used to tell me, to cancel the last 30 years of Bosnian politics. Of course, there are other details that I'm going to provide you with if you want. But from this point of view, it's very important that Bosnia is a great example, of course, between brackets, of communalism, different nationalisms, different fascisms. In Bosnia usually say that they have 3 fascisms instead of 1: the Croatian one, the Serbian one, and the Muslim one. And what is possible to do? My opinion, and of course is my humble opinion, is that Tito's strategy was the only one which could actually work there back then. Now we cannot go back to that period, but only something which is at the same time internationalisms and different kind of nationalism can work combined. So something that would provide Bosnia with a kind of Bosnian, at least Bosnian identity, because now it's very difficult for any Bosnian to identify with the Bosnian nation. They identify with the Bosnian Serbian part, with the Bosnian Muslim part, with the Bosnian Croatian part. So basically only a network and something beyond the borders of Bosnia could actually work. And yeah, just I see that there is something in the chat. Sorry.
Carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Now. Yeah. Yeah. It's one. Yeah. You're talking about the Miller Dodik's rhetorics. Yeah. Absolutely. It's one of the things. Yeah.
Can I? Sorry to interrupt, but
please.
it'd be very good if comrades have questions or points they want to make.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask them not to do it in the chat, but to do it in the meeting? Because we don't want to distract from what the comrade is saying. Are you? By the way, I mean, this is really fascinating what you've been saying, comrade. But if you could wrap up in about 5 minutes and then answer questions, there'll be plenty of questions, I know.
Honestly, in less than 5 minutes, because of course, I think that I just picked up the situation as it is. Yeah, and I would like to say that in this case, there are a lot of different strategies at work now, and one of is about Republika Srpska. So honestly, at this point, we could start with the first question about. Just a moment. I want to read all the different messages in order not to miss something. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So about Republika Srpska. Yeah. So Serbian Republic. It's one of the. It's a very good question, and yeah, it's totally. It's a risk that is possible. I'm going to explain in a few minutes. I hope. When I was in Bosnia, the president of Republika Srpska was Milorad Dodik, was a Serbian nationalist, Bosnian Serbian nationalist, and it has been the president of Republika Srpska of the entity. Okay, was a prime minister and president again. Yeah, Republika Srpska, Milorad Dodik is still in power now, is one of the leading nationalist figures of the whole area, and is threatening, it has been threatening to for Republika Srpska to leave Bosnia and unite with Serbia. I mean, it started back then. And his party, the SNSD, is still hampering all the different. I mean, in the last years, we are not participating in the Central Parliament or the House of Representatives, has a specific name, anymore. The situation is that, yeah, we are now in a situation in an international context in which something that was threatened some years ago may be more than a threat, considering the international situation. I want to, yeah. So when what about the?
Ian, wait for the discussion. It's only in 5 minutes, and then
Okay.
you can all participate.
Yeah. So basically, I want to stress that at the beginning of the war in Ukraine, there was some turmoil in Bosnia because people started to think that something again could happen in Bosnia again. I mean, between Republika Srpska and the Federation, the EU4 and UNPROFOR soldiers. I mean, it's a long story, but anyway, the United Nations soldiers sent some battles there, and now the situation is kind of suspended. And one of the problems that that area is producing in this moment is that it's not a stable area. Wrapping up here, honestly, the problem is that from a leftist perspective, only international, and it's my point, only international support can actually solve the institutional problem. Let's call it this way in Bosnia, and this would mean anyway to reshape what was done in Dayton in '95, and it would be a huge effort in this case, and only a network could, and I mean international network can do it. It's a very hard situation, but it's something that our comrades in Bosnia, not only in Bosnia, they are asking for. I've been asking for years and years. So this is my. Don't want to prolong my presentation because, of course, there are a lot of different places here.
Antonello, thank you very much. That really was very interesting and enlightening, and we learned a lot. Well, a lot that I didn't know. Ian, are you still here? Do you want to ask questions before you go? If not, then
I don't know if you'll be able to make me out. I'm in a public, so I'll just do my best, and if not, you can read them out. Just a couple of quick questions. I was the ones that came to mind, and then I'll have to head off in a minute, unfortunately. One of them would have been about present pay conditions and prospects, but you seem to have answered that already, and it's good that there's comrades on the ground, given that the overall situation is so bad. But two things was about Republic Srpska, the leadership, around the time of the Scottish referendum, I noticed, but other times too, before and since, have often talked about having a referendum to leave Bosnia and join Serbia. So could that still be a flashpoint at some point? And the other was about the distinctive legacy of Titoism as it liberated itself in World War II rather than being the Red Army, that broke with Stalin in his own lifetime, and the links with the neo-colonial world and the non-aligned movement. Are any of those distinctive elements making it any different from like the ex-communist landscape in the rest of Eastern Europe, or have they been overshadowed by the other distinctive situation of the complete disaster in the 90s?
Yeah. So thank you for your questions. I think that do you want to add something, Roger?
No, I mean, if there are more questions, perhaps you can take a few at a time. But if nobody else wants to ask a question, then you want to come back now, Antonello?
Yeah. I mean, anyway, I'm good to answer. So I think that Milorad Dodik, this the president and the main figure of Serbian nationalism in Republika Srpska, attempted 3 times to have referendums to leave Bosnia. Of course, it's something impossible from the institutional point of view. So only a war situation. I want to be blunt from this point of view. On a war situation, I mean, a referendum for Republika Srpska to leave Bosnia would mean war. And that's it. something that is, of course, not even allowed by the Dayton Agreement, and there is no institutional framework for it. But it's not something that at this point we could think is impossible. And in the last year and a half, there have been more signs that this may happen at a certain point. My comrades from Republika Srpska are kind of worried by the situation because it's something they already saw. I want to stress one thing. I was 26, 27, 28 years old when I was in Bosnia. Some of my friends were older than me, and they had been at war. During the 90s. So they know the situation of the territory and they know the science. And now they are 50 years old, something like this, and they know what the start of a war looks like. A secession, the independence of one of the entity, or even, for example, the Croatian part in Bosnia, there were some signs of something like this in the past years, would mean war, and it would destroy everything that was created in Dayton, and would actually bury any kind of working class movement from this point of view. So we are talking about, I want to relate the word that I heard the most. It's matter of fascism. And that's it. So, and it, of course, is not the only area of Bosnia that has nationalism, power, gangsterism, and so on. About Tito's era, and here we open a very important topic. Yeah, the legacy of Tito in Bosnia and in former Yugoslavia is different from the legacy that other communist parties had in other areas of Eastern Europe, for example, Central and Eastern Europe. I have to say, and when I was speaking with Roger in Bucharest, I can say that it's not. Unlikely other nations in Eastern Europe, it's not a problem to say that you are a communist in former Yugoslavia. Not only this, for example, my best friend, she was in Bosnia. She was Muslim. She was Muslim. She believed. She was a believer, and she was communist at the same time. She had. She told me that in the 80s, when she was a pioneer, it was the one of the moments in which she felt that there was no difference between being Croat, Serb, Muslim, and so on. And so the legacy is that 2 generations, and Muslim especially, were provided with citizenship, with an identity, only under Tito. Tito was a kind of, they say it's kind of rock star in at that area. It has a different style compared to other presidents in other countries. For example, I'm speaking from Romania. The situation here in Romania is totally different. It's totally different, and it's a very huge. It's such a huge difference that sometimes I have problems to explain what's happened here and to explain here what's happened there. I remember when I was in Banja Luka, which is the, let's say so, capital of Republika Srpska. I was collaborating with an organization, actually an international leftist organization. I went to the headquarters of Social Democratic Party, the single leftist progressive party remained basically in Bosnia, beside another one. Maybe we can talk about it later. And it was, and I saw a huge picture of Tito at the very entrance, something that you couldn't see here in Romania. And it's something that the legacy of Tito was not only something that is basically, there is a so-called Tito nostalgia, but it's not only about nostalgia. After Tito's death, the country started to be torn apart. I want to stress another thing. It's a very interesting. Franjo Tuđman.
Briefly, Antonello, because other comrades have questions.
Sorry. So wrapping up. Sorry, I told you very many details. Please
carry on. No, carry
yeah,
on.
Ceausescu was not Tito. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what I wanted to say is that Franjo Tuđman, fascist leader of Croatia during the war, was Tito's biographer. I mean, it was from the ranking of a communist party. So after Tito's death, it was a kind of rederationem, let's say so, a showdown in among the ranks of the Communist Party. So Tito's legacy is felt, but was destroyed from the inside, of course, and from the outside, of course, based on the international pressures. So it's something totally different. So Tito has a different image in Bosnia.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Is it Dominic or John? Yeah.
John speaking. Just
John.
a few brief comments. One, I'd like to thank the comrade for the lead off, because I think it's very enlightening. The thing that got me at the start of the war was a report in a British Sunday newspaper called The Observer, where it talked of Tuđman, and the reporter had gone to his offices in Croatia, and there was a picture, Tuđman had a picture of Hitler in his office, which really shocked me, because I thought, well, whatever shortcomings there might have been in Yugoslavia, you know, that there was, if you like, a general understanding, and particularly a general understanding of the role that the fascists, the Nazis, had played in Yugoslavia, and particularly the right wing and the Catholic Church had played. And they had a huge concentration camp in Yugoslavia that targeted all the usual suspects, but on top of that, targeted the Serbians. And I think at the time of the start of the war, there was a substantial area in Croatia that was actually Serbian. You know, there's a Serbian republic. And, you know, it brought home the whole question of, if you like, ethnic cleansing. And I'd just like to touch on Northern Ireland, where I have a bit of an understanding of what had gone on. In Northern Ireland, before the Troubles started, there was a movement. I wouldn't say it united Catholic and Protestant, because that would be an exaggeration, but it was a movement that had its base within the Catholic community, or within elements in the Catholic community, for civil rights, which was around housing and jobs, etc. And the position was one that one of the leaders, Bernadette Devlin, stood for Parliament. And because in Northern Ireland, you knew virtually how every area voted, and they could tell from the fact that she was elected that she got some 7,000 Protestant votes, because they knew from the ballot boxes that came in from certain towns or villages or postal districts that a large number of the population that were Protestant had voted for her. And she was being vilified within the pro-British nationalist community, not unionist community, as being a front for the IRA. At that time, the IRA didn't exist. But then you had the situation in Southern Ireland, where elements within the government were out to derail any movement that would unite Catholic and Protestant in the north, particularly on social grounds, you know, that had an element of socialism within it. And I think the whole thing that comes over to me is that when it comes to the ruling class, be it national or international, they have no interest in the unity of, ethnic unity of different ethnic groupings, religious groupings, etc., that has a program either of socialism or social justice. They want to derail it. And that's really come over in Northern Ireland, where what would have been a healthy movement for social reform was derailed by the IRA, who came in with guns and basically pushed out those elements that were fighting for unity on class lines of Catholic and Protestant. And a feeling comes over to me that this is exactly what was happening in the former Yugoslavia, where Tudjman represented the Croatians and Milosevic or whoever represented the Serbs, and they wanted their patch, and they were out to destroy, if you like, I might be exaggerating here, but they were out to destroy any elements that were looking for unity on class lines. And from what I've heard of Yugoslavia and what you've said, is that particularly there was a nostalgia for Tito. I think at the moment in international capitalism is trying to blacken Tito's name, make it out that Yugoslavia was like the rest of Eastern Europe, just another police state with the Stasi or with whatever other, things. This is, I think this is the sort of thing. But what you said, there seems to be a real regard for Tito, among elements within Yugoslavia. So I'll leave it at that, comrades.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, John. Before you come back, Antonello, any other comrades got points or questions? Actually, I've got one or two questions. First of all, a very trivial thing. It's just sort of nagging me. You showed the map of how Bosnia is carved up now and fragmented, and it was there's the Bosnian the Bosnia and then the Serb Republic within bits and pieces of Croatia, and then there's a yellow bit. What was that little yellow bit? That's a very small question, but can I come on to a more important point before you come back?
Do you want me?
Sorry, go on very quickly. Yes, yeah. Go on.
Okay, yeah, it's a kind of it's something surreal in a way, but if you want, I can explain immediately. Also, if you want to ask us a second question, then I will. Well,
answer. If you can answer quickly on that, and then I'll move on to.
It's very simple. It's the so-called Brčko corridor. During the Dayton Agreement, you see that basically link the two areas of Republika Srpska. Basically, they couldn't agree about the status of Brčko, in this area. So it was put directly under the administration of the United Nations, and is a kind of third part of Bosnia, which is a kind of independent both from the Republika Srpska and from the Federation in blue. And it should have stayed at this few years in order to decide where it could have belonged. And now it's an independent, let's say, Bosnian region within Bosnia. It's incredible, but it was the single area of Bosnia they couldn't agree on during at the end of the war. Please,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Yes. So I just wondered if there's a population there and how they identify themselves. But more important is, I had a question about whether, despite everything and despite all the bloodbath that took place and the very reactionary outcome of that, but is there anything in the way of united mass organizations, any united trade unions and so on? Because it did seem to me there was just a little ray of hope in what you said. First of all, in the fact that Tito is still regarded with some kind of nostalgia, or you said it was more than nostalgia, but that represents surely an aspiration to get out of the balkanization. Perhaps you can't use the word balkanization in this case, but the fragmentation, and in particular that when you said that people are not, there is no taboo about calling yourself a communist. Now that surely represents something on which a united movement could be built. And you did say also about you referred to one big strike movement, anti-privatization strike movement. So obviously, even in the darkest situation, we have a responsibility to look for where there is some ray of hope and something on which we could on which revolutionaries could begin to build and to develop a more positive internationalist current. So I'd be interested to know your response to that.
Well, yeah,
maybe I'm sorry, Antonello, but maybe we could, since there are other comrades now, perhaps you could answer 2 or 3 questions together, if that's all right.
Yeah.
David, do you want to come in now?
Yes, comrades. Not with a specific question, although you may want to comment on this, and I'd be interested to hear your views. I mean, what we saw in the 70s and to some extent in the 80s was a mass upsurge of the working class in Europe, but also in South Africa and in Namibia. In other words, we were struggling. The working class itself was taking on the national task of uniting the nation, very important in the former colonial countries, and in taking the struggle forward and from wages right through to human rights and the struggle for democracy, particularly in Namibia and South Africa. Now with the crisis in the Soviet Union, as then, I know it was a Stalinist formation, we saw the breakup of, larger political entities. A comrade once said that, unfortunately, every empire or every larger political grouping leaves the wreckage of all kinds of ethnic tensions, which had been partially overcome because you had one common enemy, not 100 other enemies. And once the central political force was broken up, we then had all these divisions. Now the question is, we saw, at least I remember from the time, heroic efforts to try and keep people together, and you've described, some of these to overcome the ethnic divisions. Apparently, at one time, throughout the former Yugoslavia, people were not even sure if they were Muslims or whether they're Croats and so forth, especially among the youth. There was intermarriage and all kinds of connections at that time. And right down to the families, there was division, when all of that broke up, which was tragic beyond belief. Now in South Africa, we had our own issues. We were struggling for freedom and achieving it in the 1990s. We didn't really reflect exactly on what we saw. But I wondered if you could express whether you feel the class can be reunited. It takes up the question which, Roger has posed around the anti-privatization campaigns, around all the degradation of life, which has come from these divisions, and that the youth as well, particularly, would be interested in making a new future. Thank you.
Okay, any more comrades have any questions or points? I see comrades from a number of countries here, all of which have got very similar kind of issues in their history. If not, then I'll ask Antonello to just come back on those questions.
So starting from the first notation about Croatia and the presence of Serbs on their territory, it's something that I can speak about. I have a first question. There was a rise of national fascism and Nazism during the Tudjman era. And not only this, Croatia, the fascist regime managed to to move all the Serbian population back to Bosnia or Serbia at the end of the war. So they freed up their country, and it's not usually really mentioned. So, and the support of the Catholic Church during the war was an open one. Okay, so I want to. We would open another page of history here. It's very long, but even if I collaborated with some members of the Catholic communities against this process, the Vatican City was the first country to recognize Slovenia and Croatia. So you can understand that the Vatican was actively promoting the difference there. So it's very long story, but of course we are talking about the Croatian fascism or Ustaša fascism, about the struggle of a working class in Bosnia. In 2014, there were in the city I used to live, Tuzla. There were some riots. I mean, it was a physical violence. From 2000 to 2008, there was a huge wave of privatization of all the former firm states in Bosnia, and it was something that interested more cities in the Federation of Bosnia. In Republika Srpska, unfortunately, there were less less evident manifestations, even if there have been some. And they took 5 days of riots, and then the situation was that basically the manifestations were repressed. About the civil society, you can openly say that you are a communist. Of course, there are a lot of fascists there. I'm not going to hide it, but you can openly say that. But at the civil society level, yeah, it's something that is working. At the political level, even at the trade union level, it's really hard because, for example, let's say in 1 year and a half ago, the Workers' Communist Party in the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina united with the League of Communists from Republika Srpska. So it is a real example that basically two forces of a civil society could merge regardless of the difference. The problem is that if you every kind of representation is considered an ethnic one, and it's all the rules, even at the trade union level, are settled, let's say so, by the rules governing the different areas of Bosnia, Republika Srpska, and the different cantons of the Federation. From this point of view, basically, the problem is that the constitution of what Tito era in the 70s and 80s was the only one that worked. Again, I want to say that in this area, yeah, it was even considered impolite to ask someone the family name, because basically you could understand the origin, Muslim one, Serbian one, Croatian one. The problem is that after the death of Tito's death, sorry, the years after years, a different kind of propaganda started from inside the Communist Party, or the League of Communists, as it was called back then. External forces of the ruling class had 10 years to crush, to destroy what Tito, and not only Tito, to be honest, there are other representatives of socialism, communism in Yugoslavia, made in the previous 30. And in this case, it was a very, and we would open another page, too much time. The strategies that they used to make some part of the population to lose their links to the socialist period and embrace a new ethnic nationalism. If you want, I can provide you with some examples, but it's something that would take a lot of time, honestly. So basically we can say that the divide was in 1980, the year in which Tito died. At this point, again, 10 years of nationalism being cooked there, and then the disaster in the 90s. And at this point, what happens is that there are a lot of organizations, but they don't have any kind of political representation. This is, long story short, what I would say about the working movement. It's really difficult for trade unions to organize beyond the borders of a canton of the entity, really. Beside.
Okay, thank you, Antonello. Look, normally I would like to just continue with this discussion now. There are no comrades with their hands up, and we do have a special spot that I'd intended to leave till later for our comrade Marcia, who is I think all the comrades know about her situation, and I've we've offered her the opportunity to speak about the latest on her struggle. This is not the closing of the discussion on the issues that Antonello has raised, but if comrades, if we can just suspend this discussion for for 5 minutes while Marcia speaks, and then we'll return to the main purpose of the meeting. Marcia, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Okay, firstly, to introduce myself, I'm Marcia Kawashitoshe. I'm from Namibia. I was employed by a security company which is contracted at the Husab mine, located in Swakopmund or nearby Swakop. Yeah, and I actually had a struggle, which is still a struggle up to today. This thing of workers being rights being exploited, and the people that are supposed to help us as workers are actually turning against us. So these things keep repeating itself. Last year, I was suspended from work because I went to the media where I spoke about the AA report, which the company is like submitting to the government, saying that they are giving us these things which is not reflecting in reality. So I was suspended and charged with charges that I put the company's name into disrepute, and I put the employer's name in disrepute. It took me 6 months, let me say 5 months, to go for my hearing. And when I finally went for my hearing, I was they hold my findings. They hold my findings because I was found not guilty of those charges. Then finally, when they gave me my findings, they claimed that I will remain on suspension because whilst on suspension, I went on and gave information about the company. This is now basically where I was like connected with the international activist, whereby I explained my situation, and then they wrote letters to the company. So the company was now not happy with this situation. So they gave me charges again, other charges, almost the same like the previous one. So I had to go for another hearing again. It was on the 3rd of May. And then very quickly, they gave me my findings where I was found guilty of all. It was 3 charges. I was guilty of all these charges. And then quickly again, I had to submit my mitigating factors, which I did on Friday. So the company also submitted their aggregating factors. And I went through these factors, and the explanations, the way they're explaining there is just they want to dismiss me. Now, the problem is that if they happen to dismiss me, it's not a problem to dismiss me, but what I want is a solution to all this struggle, because I know if we don't touch or if we don't fight this till the end, or if I specifically don't end this struggle, it will continue and it will repeat itself. Because what the company is doing or what the employer is doing is that they always target the person that is standing up for the other workers. So I was now maybe the fourth, let me say I'm the fourth person that touched on the issue of the AA report that they are still intending to dismiss. But now I decided that I will continue with this case. I will fight until there's a solution. We have a problem with those government, the government employers or those people that are in the position of solving this problem. They are working hand in hand with the employers, and at the end of the day, nothing is changing. So what I wanted, or why I came here, is actually to appeal for this case to continue, because now I want to take it to court. I want I also want to, these people that are responsible for taking action, who's not taking action, I want these people to be taken to court as well, because we are in these positions because the ones that are supposed to help us as workers, they don't stand up, but instead be friends with the employers, which actually doesn't make sense. At the end of the day, we remain in the same situation years and years. We are just the same. We don't improve. Our working conditions don't improve. Our living conditions don't improve, because the government itself is friends with the employers that are employing us. And when we stand up for ourselves, they don't actually listen to us because they are siding with the employer. So if the comrades can assist where they can, so that I can proceed with this fight, because now I'm going to be unemployed. At least the company used to pay me half, let me say 2,000 Namibia dollars for all this time that I was on suspension. And it's a bit difficult to live with the 2,000, because I have to pay water, electricity, provide food, and I have 2 daughters here with me. So it's not really adding up. So that's why I came here for that appeal. If there's and also one thing that I want to add is that sometimes we are in the position because of our own government. We are in this position because years back, after my grade 12, I did a 3-year course. I did a 3-year course of FITA Interna, and then I applied for a government loan. In my 3rd year, I was told that no, you cannot get your certificate because your loan was never approved. Then I went back to the government, to the government where the loans have been applied, to confirm why my loan was not approved and why they didn't inform me beforehand. Why did they only come and inform me in my last year that my loan was not approved? So they explained to me that no, your loan is not approved because you didn't meet the criteria. Now imagine at that age, I was, let me say 22, 23. At that age, coming out of school, pushing to educate myself so that I can one day be able to stand on my own. The government is telling you that you don't get a loan because of ABCD. But other people, you see ministers' kids that are getting loans from the government who are not people with whose parents are in better I must say better standards to pay for their own children are the ones getting loans, and us who is not really standing good, we are the ones that are denied loans, and the struggle goes. So up to now, I never got my certificate because I couldn't pay for that. So this is actually my experience, and I believe that if I proceed, or if I take this case forward, we will get this victory to this situation. So yeah, that's my case for now. That's the problem that I have.
Well, thank you very much, Marcia, for telling us, and we all salute your courage and your determination, which you've shown in this struggle. And we particularly welcome the fact that you're not prepared to accept defeats, but you're going to go on fighting. That's in the best traditions of the working class and trade unionism. And I think we build ourselves on those traditions. We have already sent out an appeal for solidarity from to comrades. Actually, I think we sent it out to comrades in I don't know how many countries, but wherever we have any contacts through WIN, we sent out about 60 emails yesterday, I think, about it. And I know that some comrades here have already pledged very, very generous contributions, and I think we should really salute those comrades. Comrade Marcia, we're with you. We'll do all that we can. In particular, it needs solidarity action, it needs protests, and it needs pressure brought on the Namibian government and the company in order to rectify this monstrous injustice that you've suffered. So thank you, comrade. I would appeal to all comrades to please keep this a priority. Right, can we return now? Any more contributions on the situation in Bosnia as described, and the lessons of Bosnia as explained by Comrade Antonello?
Rogers, Kieran, can I come in?
Yes, sure, Kieran. Yeah.
Okay. So again, I'd like to add my thanks of the other comrades for a very informative lead off. Now this is a very complex discussion, and it's one of many complex discussions that is hosted here on a Sunday afternoon. And I often kick myself for not preparing better, because the issues like this you do need to read around. So I don't have questions as such, just a series of observations, because I do pay some attention to the situation for many years, because there are commonalities with other places. Roger already mentioned Cyprus, of course, but especially Ireland, we have a lot in common. And that was evident from the very first moments of the presentation, where the slide went up with the map of Bosnia as it is today, cantonized into different areas on ethnic grounds, because very similar maps are produced for Northern Ireland, and especially for Belfast and Derry, the big cities in Northern Ireland, where every area, down to quite small geographical areas, can be defined as either orange or green, Catholic or Protestant. There are very few mixed areas in Northern Ireland in the genuine sense that are 50-50 or 40% one community, 60% the other community. It is sometimes said that there's more mixing in middle class areas, upper middle class areas, but even that's not true. Even the better off, or even the rich areas, tend to be of one community or the other community. So, and that's the reality. We have to deal with that reality, that people's day-to-day lives in their local communities are very separate. But in Northern Ireland, what really unites working class people is the workplace. And because the workplaces are integrated, then the trade unions are integrated. So the basic working class organizations are integrated. I know Roger, you've already asked about that, about the basic class organizations, what continues to exist. So that does make it easier here in certain ways, because there were periods in the past when most of the big factories, for example, were one community or the other community. That is, generally speaking, no longer the case. So that's very important in terms of pointers to the future. But there are other indicators in Northern Ireland that are actually, if you like, they're the warning lights for the future. And one that's always struck me for decades, is that in the 1980s, if 5 years before the Civil Wars broke out, 10 years before the Civil Wars broke out, when you might say that the Tito experiment, the Tito solution to the national question, kind of had reached its pinnacle. There was a very high rate of intermarriage between people from, Serbian, Croat, Muslim background. Not just were communities mixing, but couples were mixing, and there were many people who identified as being, the children as being of two different backgrounds, two different ethnic origins, and that rate of intermarriage was much higher than it has ever been in Northern Ireland. In that sense, we are more divided than communities were in Yugoslavia, or the ex-Yugoslavia, just before the eruption of the civil wars, which is a sobering fact in the negative. But in terms of what we learned from this, we had to try and learn. So it is difficult to learn anything from a snapshot. And what happened in the 1990s was a snapshot in historical terms, a period of turmoil that went on for, I think, 7 or 8 years from the first eruption of violence in the Balkans to the end, effectively, in a whole series of wars. We need to look back over a much greater sweep of time, even 150 years, because the great masters of Marxism, Marx and Engels, were writing about the Balkans in the 1870s. And of course, 110, 115 years ago, Leon Trotsky was in the Balkans as a war correspondent because of the Balkan wars at the time. So we need to be careful. We need not to be overly optimistic. You can be too optimistic, and we can simplify complex questions. And it's not simply a question of capitalism employs the method of divide and rule, and through socialism you'll sway all differences. There are two times in history where there's much to be learned, which I think are under researched and understudied. And the first is the period after the Bolshevik Revolution, when attempts were made to resolve the national question in the context of the old Tsarist Empire, where special arrangements were made for different peoples. There was the experiment with the Jewish homeland in the Soviet Union, which existed for decades, and there's remnants of it today. Special arrangements were made for various peoples, tribal groups. Rich lessons to be gained from that. But I think especially in Yugoslavia, the attempt to resolve the national question, which I think had good elements and bad elements. The bad element, in a sense, it's understandable. Some of the measures that were taken, but some of the measures are very top down, was imposed from above. Those in power decided on particular arrangements in order to try and decrease divisions over time. But because it's imposed from above, it was fragile, and of course it broke down at a certain point. But from below, in the workplaces, through the aspects of Tito's version of communism, that whilst we wouldn't fully agree that Tito's communism was a workers' democracy, there were elements of workers' democracy, we would have to say that. And all of that allowed division to be broken down. So there's just much to be learned. So just thank the comrade again for the contribution. It's prompted me to go back and think about these things a little bit more, because it's such rich lessons. And I think David was the, I can't remember what word to use, David, but the series of events in the 1990s, I think they were quite devastating for most of us who spent a lifetime struggling for workers' unity. And we didn't expect what happened. But the end expected what happened, and the very negative impact across Europe, and the negative impact continues down to today. But so thanks, Ed, for a very illuminating introduction.
Oh, thank you, Kieran. Yeah, very, very good points. And I'm glad to see that Comrade Themos has his hand up now. Themos is from Cyprus, which is another country which was absolutely savagely divided, not just divided, but completely torn apart, torn into two by ethnic conflict, whipped up, of course, by various capitalist and imperialist powers. Thomas?
Well, I'm not really going to speak about the division in Serbia. How it was, what you described is absolutely true, and it's much more complex than that. And if I went into the whole thing, I would need much more time than we could probably spare. But one thing that I am a bit worried about the report is the fact that the working class movement there doesn't believe that it can overcome ethnic divisions by itself, and it's expecting international help for that. Now, this I can see that developing in the consciousness of the workers in Cyprus as well. But the experience we have of that is not all that encouraging. I mean, we have the legacy of Stalinism, for whom international help was nothing but a disaster. We have social democratic intervention to help, but in fact to sit to sow the seeds of division among the working class and represent NATO rather than social democracy. And we have also the experience of the sects who transferred all the stupid quarrels of the international far left to Cyprus, and we haven't been given the opportunity to develop our own confidence in this. I mean, I'm not saying that somebody denied it to us or that we didn't have our own responsibilities for that, but it's something that one should be careful about. And we can see this happening all over the world. I mean, in Cyprus, we have all sorts of financing of what they call NGOs. And some of these NGOs are really well-meaning. Some of them are just there to collect subsidies and money and live out of it. And others are outright suspect for showing all sorts of diversionary struggles and divisions in the working class. And it is very interesting what we see in Georgia happening now. That they try to pass a law that anybody who is getting more than 20%, any NGO that gets more than 20% of its budget from abroad, will be considered an enemy. And this has raised all sorts of disgust from the West, who are really financing these organizations. As I said, some of them are well-meaning, but some of them are outright agents of these financiers from the West. So it is one thing. The second thing that I would like to stress is that when we speak about overcoming these divisions, we should always have in mind that we should be talking about the wider working class and the movement as a mass movement, not just a few bright and well-meaning individuals who know the theory and have a program and think that they can join the working class by joining their forces. They should join their forces. That's true, but the fact is that they shouldn't leave behind their own working class and think that they are doing something. And in Bosnia, it's probably very difficult, but we should have all these wider difficulties in mind and not expect anybody to come from outside and solve our problems. They could give help, but we should have our own independent thinking and independent mass organizations before we start hoping to overcome ethnic, religious, or other divisions.
Oh, thank you, Samo. Right, any other comrades want to come in? Yes, Jimmy. You're muted, yeah?
Okay, sorry, comrades. There's a couple of questions that I wanted to put about the background of working life in Bosnia-Herzegovina. The first thing is that looking at the information provided statistically online, it's a country with enormous spread of natural resources. And I'm just going to call out a list because it's an impressive list and it's worth noting. There's coal, iron ore, antimony, bauxite, copper, lead, zinc, manganese, nickel, clay, gypsum, salt, sand, timber, and hydropower. In any modern industrial society, that's a huge reserve that nature has benefited through that area. And the question I would ask is, who owns it? Who plans it? Who regulates it? Who decides how it's used? The second question I'd ask is in regard to the working classes. Are the workers who are the real exploiters by hand and by brain of those resources, are they affected in the workplace by the sectarian divisions of the political leaders? And the other question I want to ask is, have the workers developed independent trade unions and independent political parties represent them as workers rather than as national entities or national representatives? The other thing that I notice is that there's a very large, it's 60% or 50% of the population is urban based. And yet there's 42% of agriculture, which again appears to be fairly intensive agriculture. That it's like a region that on paper it's ideal. It has natural resources for manufacture, and it has industry and tradition feed itself. And what I try to understand is that with those advantages, how the hell can the place fall apart? And what role can the indigenous political parties of the workers, and what role can the unions play if they exist any independent degree? The final question is, again, related to those resources, is how much, if any, are owned, controlled, directed, or planned by the state as administrative body? I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Jimmy. Good questions. Can I add one that is related to that, which I forgot to ask before? But to what extent are the Serb Republic and the rest of Bosnia separate countries? I mean, how impermeable are the borders? Is the free movement between the different parts? And is there, in fact, much intercourse, if you like, between them?
Mm-hmm. Well,
just any other questions quickly first? Come on, Antonello. Yeah, sure.
I would like to thank you for your questions. Starting from the management of resources in Bosnia, now I have to add the fact that based on the political and ethnic representation in all the different parts of Bosnia, the management is basically based on external exploitation, and depends on the area. In the Croatian area, for example, we have a huge the Croatian area of Bosnia. We have a huge Austrian interest, for example, in the Muslim part of Bosniak part, because Bosniak is the official name of Bosniak and not Bosnian, is Turkey. is having honestly taking control of a lot of state firms. So remember, between 2000 2008, 80% of state firms were privatized. And not only this, the model, the former model, I think you know it, the former model of economy during the socialist era was based on cooperatives. So it was a kind of direct involvement of workers, of a working class in handling and managing some of the firms that was considered state firms. This has been destroyed. In the Serbian part, of course, we have influences from Russia and other countries. The situation is honestly is a little bit more complex than this, because of course now with the war it's more difficult. But usually all the different parts of the Bosnian economic landscape now are basically divided by international, let's say so, international borders based on the country backing that specific community, even if the community is only a representative one. So, for example, now we have a lot of new universities sponsored by countries like Austria, Germany. Germany was pro-Croatian, pro-Muslim during the war. And there are huge interests. As just a kind of anecdote here, I lived in the north, close to that yellow area I showed you, Brčko, and the uniforms of the German army are made in that zone, in that area, and the workers there, usually females, women, are paid no more than 250 euro per month, 300 euro per month. So basically now, and of course about the resources, they are handled and they are privatized. Basically Bosnia is, and I think it's a logical consequence of what we have said until now, is not a sovereign state. And basically the independence of the trade unions is basically really shattered by those barriers, which are institutional economics and so on. So, for example, even the miners, which used to be a very important trade union, a very important trade union during the socialist era, now they don't have any trade union at all. There is no representation. There are categories. I would like to add one thing. When in 2006, 2007, 2008, when I was there, the unemployment rate in Bosnia was 31%. Now, 31% is, of course, is a disaster. Now, if you see the last stats about it, the unemployment nominally is 12%. Well, it's not that the situation improved so much. It's the diaspora. Bosnia has a huge diaspora, and basically the unemployment rate just decreased because workers had to go abroad. The resources are not usually managed directly by the Bosnian people, trade unions, institutions. They are managed by other powers and so on. About your question, Roger, about the borders, there is no formal control at the border between the entities. So the concept of entity exists only for this country. So you don't have even to show your ID or to be stopped. Basically, sometimes you can step in the Republika Srpska even if you are traveling in the federation without knowing it. But it's very interesting because it's an admission that is a fictitious entity, but it's real only on the political and administrative ground. Hope that I don't want to prolong my answer too much, but from this point of view, there is no independence in the civil society representation, and it's something. It's a very hard lesson to be learned, because one of my first advices at the beginning was avoid that something like this may happen, because once it's happened, it's horribly hard to get back. And from this point of view, again, I relate with two solutions that I heard of in Bosnia, and I am hearing about now: either war or revolution. I know this is extreme, but in a way, it's something that cannot be, I don't know how to say, healed in a different way. The situation is a kind of crystallized. Okay. And that's it.
Well, thank you, Antonello. Are there any more questions or comments? If not, I think we'll close the meeting. Thank you. I think it's been really, really very interesting, and I think the political points apply in the countries of all the comrades who've participated, and I think we've all learned a lot. David, yes?
Yes, comrades, apologies for coming in again. Look, Marcia's appeal is very urgent. I should say that we've learned a lot from the discussion about the division of working people. In Namibia, we have the same situation, particularly in relation to the plight of women workers and to those workers who have families also in the rural areas. Now, Marcia's issue is that she's been victimized, that we can fight for her to get either reinstatement or compensation, and to give her the support she needs to survive. And so I do raise it again with the comrades to take it to the union branches. The report that we've had an initial flurry of interest. Let's consolidate that and put it down so that the Namibian authorities, who Marcia mentions are always on the side of the employers, know that internationally there's a counterforce. So, comrades, please do what we can, and let's see how we can win the struggle. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. It's going to be a high priority for all the comrades, I'm sure. As for next week, we don't, as of now, we don't have a topic for next week. We do appeal to comrades to come up with suggestions, to volunteer. We've managed to find a wealth of topics and of speakers over the last 4.5 years now, practically every week. And I will be, you will receive notification in the next few days of the content of next week's meeting. But if any comrades want to volunteer or have any suggestions or nominations, please let us know. Okay. Okay, thank you, comrades. Very good meeting. Thanks very much. And Antonello particularly, thank you so much. That was absolutely a model exposition of the issues. Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
comrades. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, and have a nice day. Bye.